Good evening. Welcome to the Village Board meeting for the Village of Pleasantville. Today is Monday, March 12. If you are watching live on Monday, March 12, we encourage you to call in if you have comments or questions. The call-in number is 769-1677. As always, you can watch us on either Cablevision or Verizon, or on-demand webcast, as well as live webcast at pctv76.org. Our next regular meeting is Monday, March 26 at 8 p.m. with a work session at 7. And I want to remind everybody that we have a village election which will be held a week from tomorrow. That's Tuesday, March 20. The voting hours are from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. in this room. That's Village Hall, 80 Wheeler Avenue, second floor. So there are two trustee positions and the mayor's position are up for election, and we encourage you to exercise your civic right and cast your ballot. Again, the village election Tuesday, March 20. Voting hours are from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. right here. I had a few announcements to make, actually a little bit of a list of announcements to make. Many of you may have read over the last several days, and will certainly read over the next few days, about a recent development in the civil case relating to the Dan Roy Henry tragedy that took place at the Thornwood Town Center in October 2010. The estate of D.J. Henry, as well as a number of other people who were there, have sued various people, including the Village of Pleasantville, the Town of Mount Pleasant, and the county police. That process has been making its way through, and the village is ably represented by insurance-appointed counsel. And there was a hearing that took place last week before a federal magistrate that resulted in the decision by the federal magistrate that almost all the evidence, with certain specific exceptions, would be available to be made public. That was evidence that had recently been transferred to all of the various attorneys, both on the plaintiff side and on the defendant side. So the attorneys on all sides had this evidence, but were under a court order to keep it confidential. So that court order was lifted for most categories of the evidence, and as a result, that evidence will start to be released, and indeed quite a bit of it was released today, and doubtless will be the subject of a lot of press commentary. So you'll hear more about that as it goes forward, and my only point on behalf of the village was to make clear that we are ably represented by our counsel, and the decision to make that material public was not entirely unexpected. Beyond that, it's clear, I think, that the case will be argued and decided in the courtroom and not in the newspaper, despite the fact that a lot of ink will be spilled on the subject over the next days and weeks and months. So also want to report what I think most everybody already knows, and that is that a big percentage of our meetings over the last two regular meetings was devoted to a discussion about our unhappiness about the Department of Transportation's proposed tower project along the Sawmill Parkway north of the Taconic. As I think almost everybody knows, the DOT decided a couple of weeks ago to cancel that project. They are not going to build the towers on the Sawmill north of the Taconic, and that was, I think, the result of an extremely effective effort on behalf of a lot of citizens of the Village of Pleasantville, as well as our neighbors in Mount Pleasant and in Newcastle, both towns also affected. They certainly had the full support and leadership of this board, as well as the support and leadership of the elected boards in Newcastle and in the town of Mount Pleasant. Special thanks to our assemblyman here in Pleasantville, Tom Abenanti, who got on this matter very, very early and very aggressively, and we thank him for that. Senator Andrew Stewart Cousins sent a letter to the DOT commissioner shortly before the decision was made, and I know that, as you may have seen if you were here or watching at our last meeting, Assemblyman Bob Castelli, who represents Newcastle and areas north, was both here at our meeting and also has been an effective advocate. So thanks to all of those people for an impressive effort, and I think thanks ought also to go to the Department of Transportation and the Commissioner, as well as the administrator of the DOT region that includes this project. They took a look at it, they understood the concerns, they certainly heard the community and made really quite a rapid decision not to go forward, which was very much welcomed by all of us. So thanks to everybody for their help on that front, and if I can be allowed a little patriotic enthusiasm, thanks especially to the Village of Pleasantville. Among the communities that were affected, I think the core of the organizing group was right here in Pleasantville, New York, and as is often the case, this small town has influence that far exceeds its size. Kudos to the kids as well as a spectrum of parents who help out at the high school play Beauty and the Beast, which opened last weekend and runs again next weekend. Not a village activity, it's a school district activity, but it is a community tradition in the fullest sense of the word, and an utterly remarkable thing to go to a high school of that size and see what goes on that stage. Not only the enthusiasm and the quality of the work done by the kids, the groups that are drawn together who don't normally spend a whole lot of time together and become a band of comrades to put on such an extraordinary thing, and a remarkable array of parents, both parents of kids who are currently in the play, parents of kids who will someday be in the play, and in my case, as well as a bunch of other people's case, parents of kids whose experience with the play is now in the taillights, but hard not to still help. So really a remarkable thing. I've spent this a few minutes talking it up, and now I get to tell you that I think it's sold out for the second weekend. But if you are so inclined, you can go to phsplay.org and take a look to see if a seat is available. It would be $15 extremely well spent. So kudos to all of the people involved in that, and kudos to the school district for maintaining an evolving but utterly remarkable tradition that began 30 or 40 years ago with the work of Dr. Valentino. So,
and you're still working on it?
I am. I can't seem to graduate.
As the prop man.
I can't. I am now decidedly last in line as the prop man, but always happy to take on a mission. So we have had or are in the process of seeing two retirements in the Village of Pleasantville, longtime employees who have decided to retire after many, many years of service. The first I think we have already mentioned, and that is Steve Johnson, our longstanding Department of Public Works superintendent, is retiring at the end of this month, and we'll be having an opportunity to thank him in many different ways, as well as hopefully amuse him a little bit as he packs his bags to move on to the next stage of his life. But a man who has provided extraordinary service to this village and who has left us in an extremely good position for the future as we continue through the process of looking for his replacement. Also want to announce, as you'll see tonight, we have a resolution accepting the retirement of Police Lieutenant Michael Wilson, also a longtime employee in the Village of Pleasantville. Started here as a patrolman and worked his way up, and retires from us in the next couple of weeks at the rank of lieutenant. So best wishes to Mike Wilson for the next phase of his life. So I promised the Pleasantville Recycling Committee a promise that's easily made to comment about their activities on a fairly regular basis, and they sent along information about a number of upcoming events. On Saturday, April 21, they're going to have the second annual Pleasantville Recycles Day down at the DPW garage. It was a very successful event last year. A lot of people came on down to meet the recycling committee and to find out details about how you can recycle various things through the village services and through the county services, and ways in which you can try to run your life to reduce the amount of waste you create. And it was really a very successful thing. I think will be equally so. So Saturday, April 21, we'll have more to say about that as the day approaches, but mark your calendar for Pleasantville Recycles Day. On Thursday evening, May 3rd, they will also be participating in the annual Middle School Earth Day celebration and display, and the village has already agreed, as we have done in the past, to bag up compost and hand that out. So there you would have an example of your village government at work.
Ooh.
We take your leaves and then we give you back dirt. So
That was very popular.
It was very popular, and popular for a good reason. Also a good opportunity to remind you that anybody who is so inclined, who likes to do gardening and is interested in very rich and locally produced compost, we have it down at the DPW garage, and Pleasantville residents are welcome to come on down and dig into the pile and take some compost for their own gardens. Saturday, May 19th is Pleasantville Day. That is a date to be put on your calendar for lots of reasons, but the recycling committee will also be there as well. They have put together a really pretty amazing and quite amusing video. It has a very long URL, so I'll hand that to Patty, and we'll put that up on our website if you'd like to watch the video that Christine Grislow has put together about the recycling committee. It's just a few minutes long and a lot of fun to watch, so I encourage you to do that. We'll put that up, and as always, you can go to pleasantvillerecycles.org, which is the center of all things recycling, including the popular How to Recycle A to Z. So that's the report on recycling. Lastly on my list, I wanted to mention that we received a letter from the town of Newcastle, which is really not directly related to us, but it involves a referral that they sometimes make when they're looking at a proposal that requires some zoning issues. It really doesn't affect us, but it was worth mentioning, and that is that Northern Westchester Hospital, which currently has some outpatient activities like in the old Reader's Digest property, has applied for a temporary parking amendment to the town of Newcastle because they are planning to build a parking garage at the hospital in Mount Kisco, and during the time period of that construction, they also they are hoping to be able to use an additional an additional 250 parking spaces at the Reader's Digest project. So again, it has nothing to do with us, and it's not our decision, but I just thought it was worth letting people know what's going on at Northern Westchester Hospital, and we try to do the same for Phelps to let you know what's going on. And I also noticed today in the newspaper that the town council in Newcastle has floated in a very preliminary way the idea that some parcel of the Reader's Digest property might be an appropriate place for a grocery store. So interesting discussions going on in our neighbors to the north.
Wouldn't want to be on that board right now.
I'm happy to report that our own grocery store, Key Food, is actually in the preliminary stages of working with the village about a modest expansion and some improvements to our local grocery store. So we find ourselves in the happy and hopefully permanent position of having a grocery store right here in Pleasantville, New York.
Maybe we should let them know about the Super Stop and Shop. They do it, their place.
So at any rate,
Give peas a chance.
then lastly, I wanted to remind everyone that the village election, as I mentioned earlier, is taking place a week from Tuesday, March 20th. But PCTV will be filming and presenting a candidates debate among the trustee candidates that is sponsored by the Pleasantville Chamber of Commerce, and that will be happening here at Village Hall, I guess the second floor, am I right, Shane? Right here in this room, this coming Thursday from 8:30 to 10:30. People are welcome to attend if they are so inclined, and they can also watch it on either Cablevision or Verizon. Cablevision 76, Verizon 36 for PCTV, Cablevision 78, Verizon 39 for the government channel, or PCTV76.org. So again, I encourage you to take advantage of every opportunity to inform yourself about what's going on and to participate in the election that takes place in a little over a week. I think that was my list. Anybody else?
Yeah, I had a question. Shane, what will be the schedule for airing the debates once they are filmed and available aside from the live debate period? Or has that been figured out?
It's really hard for him to come from behind the camera.
Well, I think Shane is wearing multiple hats, as he always does.
All right, so what's going to happen is, right now we have a half-hour interview with every candidate. George Dulce declined. Sam Barron and Martin Wilbur from the Examiner News did half-hour debates with every candidate.
Discussions, not debates, right?
Right, discussions. And The debate will be on Thursday, and I will find a time slot, and I'm going to be airing everything. So PCTV will have the half-hour interviews and the debate, and it'll be just running nonstop up until the election. And then we'll change the schedule the day after the election. We're also going to be doing a live, what's it called? When the election's over and they announce the results, we'll be coming live from Village Hall to announce the results, and we will interview every candidate afterwards, and that will go on television as well.
Okay.
On the 20th. Okay?
So the next 8 days are a magic garden for civics geeks.
Yes, exactly. Okay.
And anybody else have anything to add to the mix there? The last thing I wanted to mention is those of you who stick around for our scintillating resolutions will also hear that we are accepting the fire department's request for the firefighters parade, as we always do. So the firemen's parade, a great Pleasantville tradition, will take place on Friday, June 1. So mark your calendars. We have a public hearing tonight on local law amending Chapter 185 zoning, Article 7A, wireless telecommunication service facilities, Section 185-35.1, which is regulation of wireless telecommunication service facilities. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have before us a proposed resolution that would establish a 12-month moratorium. That is a moratorium that's limited in a number of ways consistent with the rights that are afforded local municipalities. But essentially the idea here is that we would have a 12-month moratorium on anybody wanting to move forward with an application or the construction of a wireless telecommunications tower. The reason that we proposed this was in part that the last time we've had a serious review of the aspects of our law that regulate wireless telecommunication devices, most particularly cell towers, was probably now 12 years ago, something like that. Is that sound right, Brian? So, in addition to that, the proposed project from NYSDOT, again now canceled, made clear to us that we were also at some risk, clearly not very much just at the moment, because the mouse has roared, but we were at some risk of having wireless telecommunication facilities installed along state right-of-ways in the village of Pleasantville without the right for us to review them. And as a result, it gave rise to the question that perhaps it was the logical time to pull back a little bit, take a look at exactly how the law is currently written, how our zoning is currently written, how the federal law may or may not have morphed in the 12 or so years since our last zoning rewrite on this subject, and as a result to freeze the idea of any further cell towers during that time period. I add that to my knowledge there are no active applications for any such thing at the moment.
The last application we had for a cell tower improvement was to add an additional carrier onto the cell tower at the DPW garage site. That was maybe less than a year ago, because we saw that here.
Right.
And we needed to expand our lease agreement because it's on public property, as I recall.
I don't think this moratorium would
Yeah,
apply.
this
because
moratorium would
the
not
tower's
apply
already built.
to that. So, for example,
Right, that's already
although I
in
think our
place.
tower is pretty well maxed out at this point, but further use of existing facilities would not be limited, and the code, as it is written, also provides a procedure to apply for relief if there were to be an applicant who felt that the moratorium was particularly problematic for them. There is a method by which they could apply the Board of Trustees, and there would be a public hearing at which the carrier would present evidence demonstrating the need, in particular identifying a specific gap area in coverage or something of the kind. So in the end, the village is not permitted to eliminate cell towers from its within its borders, and that isn't our intent here, but we do have some local control over where they go, and conceivably some local control about the adjacency of one to another, and it just seemed like a good opportunity to put a stop on anything that might be suggested over the next 12 months and take a look at it. We could, correct me if I'm wrong, Patty, rescind this in less than 12 months if
Yes,
we
you can,
felt
yes.
as though our review had made clear that no changes were needed, or if our review resulted in proposed zoning changes and we enacted them. So
And if applicants came in, you could entertain those applications. You could waive the moratorium requirements
With findings.
through findings.
I think one of the concerns we had back then, I think, Steve, you and I were on the planning commission at the same time as this was being considered. But what really drove this, Peter, you referred to it last week, was the fact that private parties can enter in these agreements
Right.
without knowledge of the
That's
village.
the
We
problem. Right.
suddenly woke up to the idea that one of these towers was going to go on top of the post office, just back here.
Right.
And that made us think, and the cell company came forward and said, well, it turns out that that's the ideal place. And as the law, either as the law reads or as we change the law, it doesn't have to be in the ideal place. It can be in an almost ideal place, and we can insist on that for certain aesthetic reasons and so
Right.
on. And that's why we were able to prevail moving it down to the DPW. And I think that's something we have to remember is these things, I think there's going to be further pressure with more digital companies, carriers coming in. We just have to remember that that's why this is a valuable thing to do. We have to really see where we are, see what our options are, so that they're not just springing up on private property all over the area without us having any say.
And it's not just the federal telecommunications laws that have changed, but it's actually the industry itself that's changed. As I mentioned, we were discussing this a few meetings ago. There are a lot of, I shouldn't say that, there is technology now to mount relatively small transmitters on existing utility poles. So Verizon, if they own the pole, could enter into an agreement with a cell carrier. That may or may not be something that we want to see. I would think in most communities it's invisible, it's not a tower, there's shorter ranges of projecting signals, and it might be something that after some discussion we have some position on, and I won't guess that yet, but technology has clearly changed. And so I think that it is a very opportune time to look at what we said 15 years or so ago, and that's a long time in terms of the kind of technologies we're dealing with, and whether it still clearly makes sense.
The law hasn't changed. It's still the Telecommunication Act of 1996. We're still,
That's
There
right.
may be
Still dealing with
amendments.
the same-
There's probably a few amendments to it, but essentially, no, it's the
Well,
same.
I
but
think-
our law is to that act of 1996.
I think the
Yeah.
village responded to that by creating
Right.
certain conditions and zones where they would allow.
That's right. And that's what we're going to look
Structures,
at, is
right.
see if we want to.
I mean, I think one of the things that, again, we should remind people is that that law provides that we can never object on health grounds.
That's
right.
correct.
So
That's nationwide.
Nationwide, that's settled law. So whenever we hear, for example, in this past fight, people are complaining about health grounds, that may or may not be the case, but we're not allowed to make that
That's
claim.
correct.
We're not allowed, we can't fight that fight again. That was
That's
fought
correct.
at the national level. We can only object to citing for aesthetic reasons and for other lesser reasons, but certainly not on health grounds.
That's correct.
Unfortunately.
That's correct.
And it should be also noted that, we have the one that's on village property, and whoever the leasees on the pole are income to the village of Pleasantville. And I think you put a limit on that?
I think there were only five
Five
allowed on
allowed.
that poll,
And I
and
think-
we're getting a good amount of money for that, aren't we?
Yes.
Patty? Something
We're getting-
along the
It's
lines
about
of
$30,000 a year per
each.
carrier.
Yeah.
That's
So
about right.
So that was income that a private party could have gotten had they put one right in the middle of the
Right,
village.
that's the
That
concern.
instead is being
Mhm.
channeled
That's
to the
right.
village, and that's what we want to have the power to keep channeling it in that direction, so.
That's right.
So again, I don't want to leave anybody
It's a public hearing, so.
with the impression that we are doing this because we think there are 7 cell carriers rushing to build towers in the village of Pleasantville. That's not the case.
We don't know any.
Indeed, there aren't any active proposals at all at the moment, but it does seem like a opportune time to take a look, and that might qualify as one of the blessings that came along with the burden of the argument with DOT about the towers. So, anybody from the public wants to comment on that? Come on up. Give us your name and address if you would.
Sure, Matthew Finkelstein, 11 Gramerton Road. Nice to see you all again.
Likewise.
My first question has to do with the ability of private landowners to site wireless communication facilities on their property. It seems that the board has some idea that that would be permitted without the special use permitting process provided for in the zoning code. And it looks to me like 185-35.1B says that no wireless telecommunications facility shall be located, constructed, or maintained on any lot, building, or structure or land area in the village of Pleasantville without a special permit. So unless there's a definition section, which I have to admit I did not scour to see,
Come on.
I'm curious as to what the basis for that is.
I think you are right. It does require a special permit, but the circumstances under which the Planning Commission can issue or deny a special permit are need to be both consistent and based on fact. Fair to say, Steve?
Yeah, I think the thing that most people don't understand about special permits is that a use that's allowed by special permit is a use that's allowed in the zone if you meet the conditions of the special permit. And I think that part of what we would be looking at under this moratorium is what those special permit conditions currently are and whether they are sufficient in today's climate if a cell carrier were to come forward with a proposal.
Okay, so there's another section of the zoning code that has to do with special use
Yes.
permits in the generic sense.
Right.
Well, and there's also a lot of settled law about it, just about special use permits in general.
Okay.
If we just deny, just because we don't like it, that may not be legal. They could theoretically come back and sue us for, there has to be a process here that has to be followed. And
Right, but it has to be
conditions
consistent with the Telecommunications
That's
Act.
right.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah, and I'm guessing in the end, I somewhat doubt, although I'm hopeful, that we'll arrive at the end of this with more control rather than less, but I think it's helpful, among other things, just for everybody, and certainly the community comes along, hearing what goes on at meetings if they care to tune in, to understand what the rules are, understand what the lay of the land is, and understand what we're allowed to say no to and what we're not. In a world where obviously most of us have cell phones and we all want good service, but we also want that to fit into our community as best it can.
Sure.
But there's the home rule issue also of if I think that law supersedes, the state law supersedes our village code law. Our
Federal
village law.
does. It's
Yeah,
the
the
Federal
federal
Act.
law.
Really decimates your zoning
It
authority.
does. It gives us a lot of problems with that. That's
Right.
another good reason to pull this out and relook at it again. And
Right.
any suggestions
The idea.
are very welcome
The
on how
federal
to deal
idea
with this.
was that if they were going to establish this network over the entire
Right.
country, that they weren't going to just fight, these World War II, World War III's in every little Kodak
Right.
town. So they were going to take care of it all at once back at.
Right, so they decimated home rule
Right.
for everybody.
So that's the
Basically-
logic behind it, but we're trying to
Right.
fight whatever we can. We're trying
Right.
to establish our rights.
You can't prohibit them, but you can regulate to a certain extent where you can place these things.
Right.
That's what's left under the
Right.
Telecommunications
And that's why you saw
Act.
ours being placed from here to over there. We were
You
able
can't
to do
prohibit
that.
them, but you can
Right.
permit them under certain
Yeah,
conditions.
they
Well,
really,
right, and the
that's
one-
really, the location is really the only thing you can go after.
And the one thing they certainly decimated was the health concerns. That seems to
Right, we
be...
can't.
Yep.
Right.
They
And as a
took
matter
it
of
off the
fact-
table.
Yeah, and I just took a look at some of the cases, and there are some
Right.
recent cases. The
Right.
Village of East Hills had an issue. They had a building. They tried to stop another carrier from piling onto one building. And the ZBA finding included a general boilerplate statement, health, welfare, and safety of the citizens, and the court pretty much seized upon that and find the Zoning Board of Appeals didn't have substantial evidence in the record, which is the standard for review. It doesn't even have to be a preponderance of the evidence, it just has to be substantial evidence in the record. So with that in mind, just taking a look at 18535.1A2, there is a statement here of intent and objectives which actually has the word health in it. So that's something we might want to look at in terms of removing from the code itself.
To avoid being another East Hills.
Yeah, the thing to understand about the health and welfare issue, when the first zoning case was decided in this country, it had to do with New York City zoning. I think it was in 1919. Went to the Supreme Court, and that's when zoning was first. It was the first major court case that settled that zoning was an appropriate use of local law, and under that court case, one of the things that was a key terminology was the health and welfare issue. Now, initially, back in those days, if you will, there was a question of factories being located across the street from residences and grocery stores being located underneath the factory. There was no separation of land uses. So one of the things that came out of Euclid versus Ambler Realty, another early case, was the separation of uses. That's got a long history of how that's been fit into zoning as it's looked at today. They call it Euclidean zoning. But the health and welfare clause has been expanded to include not just the impact of factory smoke and other impacts on immediate residential neighborhood, but also to look at the sort of things that as Brian mentioned earlier, the aesthetic impact on a piece of the community or a portion of the community by a cell tower might affect property value. So there's a lot that can be pulled into the health and welfare thing. It doesn't have to be the literal public health as in the health impact from cell phone itself. But in order for that ZBA decision to have withstood the court test, they would have had to be very explicit of what they meant by health and welfare. And it's really the welfare end of it, not the health end of it, that they probably wanted to talk about, the welfare of the community in terms of property values and other sorts of things that they might have been able to hook this whole thing on if they'd been more explicit.
Right, and in that vein, I mean, any court looking at your zoning code per se for prima facie illegality could seize on a word like that to justify their decision. So it's just something that could be looked at.
It's a great point.
It's a very good point.
Other things that I noticed had to do with the maximum tower height of 150 feet, whether or not that can be recalibrated in some fashion. There was also a 50-foot threshold for annual inspections, perhaps either increasing the number or decreasing the threshold to provide for additional inspections based on safety issues could be something that could be looked at. And then also just the demonstration of a compelling need in the community in terms of coverage. If you go to cellreception.com, you have basically you can punch in the zip code for Pleasantville, and it ranks the providers. So it appears that Verizon, I think, is near the top in terms of coverage.
What's the website?
Cellreception.com, CELL reception.com. And that's courtesy of Dina Nelkin, who did some initial research for the other.
Like lots of things.
Right. And I would also like to thank her for giving me a head start on some of these cases to look at. But the other thing is, if you go to each cell provider's website, they all tout how great their service is.
Right.
But then I noticed in the Village of East Hills case, there wasn't a robust effort by the opposition to present their own data to use against them, because apparently that's just for public consumption, but then the cell carriers go and they do more intense studies of more pockets of the neighborhood in order to demonstrate the service irregularities that they're looking to remedy by this. So that's just something to keep in mind, but to say that there's a compelling need when the cell phone carriers themselves say there's adequate coverage, either good or excellent. If you take a look, if you punch in each major carrier and you punch in a zip code, it's either good or excellent. I'm not saying to have a language in there that would effectively ban all applications, because I know that would be improper and it wouldn't hold up. But just to keep that in mind when writing this code in terms of the legal justification for the applications would be in order.
Well, normally what the cell carriers would come in with is a coverage map, and they would identify the gap and what they were proposing to fill that gap. And it could be something like a tower, it could be something like these other gizmos that I was talking about a little earlier. If you've got a quarter-mile stretch of Bear Ridge Road, for instance, where all the cell calls are being dropped, you might be able to use a utility pole mounted box for that area rather than putting up a cell tower that would get everybody upset for miles around and would be visible and much more intrusive than it needs to be. And it kind of gets back to my point before, that technology has changed so much. I think it's really more a technology thing we need to address looking
Right.
at this than compliance with the telecommunications law, because the technology has probably changed dramatically and much more than I'm aware of. I just happened to find out about these utility pole topped boxes and talking with an attorney who used to be employed with Snyder & Snyder, one of the big cell carrier law firm representatives down in Terrytown, and he was aware of this stuff that I wasn't. We were working on a project with a different unrelated use, but I was very fascinated to learn what's going on in cell communications now. But to know that and to understand that may be a way to deal with some of these pockets that we currently have that don't need a big cell tower to take care of.
And he's a former lawyer for the
He's
firm that handled the
he's a practicing attorney with his own firm at this point in time, very knowledgeable in the subject matter.
You're right.
He could be a
though.
valuable resource.
Yeah,
He
that's-
could be a very valuable resource.
Schneider and
I think
Schneider
I'd already
really
suggested to Peter, who
Imminent
knows him.
firm.
I do know him, so he is a good guy.
So I just want to thank the board for considering this and for staying ahead of the game.
And thank you, and sorry to report, we're going to call you.
Yeah, please, please
Feel
stay
free.
involved in this issue.
Absolutely.
That would be
Yes.
really great.
Thanks a lot, much appreciated.
Thank you.
Any further comment or call in at 769-1677 on this public hearing regarding the telecommunications moratorium? Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So,
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 Public hearing is closed. We can move to our resolution, Steve, number 36.
Resolved that pre-check register dated March 12, 2012, covering check numbers 71691 through 71837 has been reviewed and hereby approved as listed below. General Fund, $133,299.40. Miscellaneous Revenue Fund, $315. Water Fund, $17,036.83. Capital Fund, $12,863.25. The Refuse Fund, $24,006.78. The Pool Fund, $4,431.42. Trust and Agency, $3,706, for a total of $195,658.68.
hey, Michelle.
Is there a second?
Second.
Hold on a second.
Okay, all right, hold on one second, okay? Second?
Okay,
I got
all in
Michelle.
favor of the pre-check register?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. Okay, what
So,
did Michelle?
and I have Michelle Lucia. We'll have to say it again, Michelle. Let me just, okay, Michelle.
Michelle.
Hi, Michelle Lucia, 386 Bedford Road, and I'm calling tonight. I actually have 3 questions. The first is in reference to the Dan Roy Henry lawsuit. I know Mayor Shearer said that we are being represented by our insurance carrier, which of course makes sense, but I'm wondering what is the maximum liability, the dollar amount of the policy that the village has in this particular situation?
There is an umbrella policy over and above our $10 million basic coverage.
Right,
Am I
and what's
Patty?
the umbrella for?
I have to get back to you.
So over and above the 10 mil.
There are some variables attached to all of that, so we can get back to you, or we can even give you a copy of the policy if you'd like to have it.
I'm just
Yeah.
curious about the dollar amount because
Patty doesn't know, she has to look it up.
I mean, there are some variables attached to that, so I hesitate to come up with an exact number. Our basic coverage is 10 million.
Okay, and then obviously for the umbrella to come into play, they'd have to recover the full 10 million? Is that the way it works?
I think that is the case, yes.
Okay. And the other thing is the cell tower issue. I want you all to know that we Sprint subscribers are still being charged Pleasantville City sales tax.
Unbelievable.
I've called Sprint, and they swear up and down that we are listed in the government, listings as being an entity that can be taxed, even though I've explained to them that there is no sales tax, but still.
But we're not a city.
Are they sending the money somewhere? They're certainly not sending it to us.
It's not coming to me either, but they are charging every single invoice that I have from Sprint lists a Pleasantville City sales tax.
So if it's okay with you, Michelle, I wouldn't mind just having a copy of the relevant page that has that.
Right.
And we'll fire off a certified letter and see what we get back.
Yeah, because they're collecting something that they're not entitled to.
Yeah, I
and
mean,
I'm
they
sure
need to
I'm
give
not
it
the only
back
Sprint.
to the customers.
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
want all the money they took from you, Michelle.
No, I want nothing to do with it.
Is it like 2 cents or something? Even not saying that it's not a big deal. It is a big deal.
It ranges from like 7 to 14 cents.
So,
But
I mean, that's
Every
it.
month.
3 years,
For
yeah.
the city of Pleasantville. Maybe there's a city of Pleasantville. I think that Pleasantville in New Jersey is a city.
She's not
Well,
the only
they
one.
ask you your zip code, and I provided it. I've been all through the not hierarchy, but I've made numerous calls. And Sprint just claims, okay, we're allowed to collect taxes, and this is the way it is. So anyway, I'll be happy to submit or show you the copy of my
just
invoice.
give us a copy of the relevant page, and then we'll get that fired off and see what comes of it.
Okay, and I'll expect a rebate.
But, yeah, I can tell you with certainty, we're not getting the money.
I know that.
Yes.
And the other issue is all of the truck traffic seems to be back on Bedford Road. Has this enforcement issue fallen off the radar of our police department?
I'm not aware that anything has changed. We had an enforcement rotation for trucks, so I'll ask the police chief.
Because there was an improvement, I have
Yes.
to say. If I call and complain, I also have to say that there's been a
That's right.
improvement. And for many weeks and months there have been, but the last, I'd say, 2 weeks, we're back to having those huge Cisco restaurant delivery trucks that are, those 18-wheelers. And, the trucks are definitely, they're back.
All right, I'll ask, because clearly whatever it was that we were doing, we should keep doing it.
Yes,
So-
absolutely, because there was an improvement. And I wanted to say that the musical is wonderful. As you stated, Peter, we saw the show yesterday, and I encourage everyone to go because it was really a great experience.
It sure was.
So those are the issues. And you said as far as the umbrella policy, that's something that you have to look into to see.
Yeah, I mean, we're insured by the New York Municipal Insurance Reciprocal, NYMER, which is in essence a collective that self-insures among many communities, as well as some counties in New York State. Patty is actually now a member of the Board of Governors. And it has been a very good experience for us on many levels, both in terms of the premium we pay as well as the service we get. And there is essentially a shared pool of risk among all the members. So we have certain specific coverages, and then over and above that, there are some other aspects of the shared pool of risk that come into play. We, as you know, intend to vigorously defend our position.
Now, does that same entity also provide the coverage for the umbrella policy?
Yes, all of our insurance is with NYMER.
Okay. And then lastly,
All of our liability insurance.
You said 3, Michelle. You hit your limit.
I know, but I actually have 4. No one else is burning up the phone line, so I think we should just go with it.
You're our
Yeah.
only, you're our only caller.
All right, keep going. We're happy
We
to
have
have
Bruce from Flushing.
I wanted to ask about Lieutenant Wilson's retirement. Will that lieutenant's opening be permanently vacated, or are you going to fill that space with another lieutenant?
We anticipate a promotion to lieutenant from within the ranks.
Okay. All right, and I guess there's, okay, Mindy, this is number 5 if you're...
Yeah, it's fine, Michelle.
What's our status or the update as far as merging with the county, or where do we stand with those talks?
Good question.
It is a very good question. I began the discussion with the county now 15 months ago. The county was, I think, pretty close to giving us a proposal almost a year ago, and then the county executive put a stop to the discussions for a good long time period for a series of reasons that
I'm aware of that.
he
I think I
described.
actually called in about that.
I visited the county executive in December, and the discussions are renewed. I say discussions. We've provided them, as we did a year ago, with updated information about the current status of our budget, our workforce, our number of calls, etc. We are waiting for and expect to get a proposal from the county. Hard to say exactly when. They report that they are continuing to work through some issues on their side of the table. They have also, as you may have read in the newspaper, announced that Mount Kisco has expressed interest
Yes.
in the possibility of outsourced police services with the county. So I anxiously await a response from the county. 15 months in county, we haven't got it. But when we do get it, we intend to look at it with great care. Clearly, there are going to be issues as well as pros and cons attached to any proposal. Essentially, there are really 4 options we could pursue. One of them is to leave the department independent, operating the way it is. Another is to leave the department independent, but try to find some flavor of shared services with an adjacent community, most likely the town, shared dispatch, shared coverage in off hours, whatever that might be. We've gone fairly far down the road in discussion with Mount Pleasant about that as well, and although there may be some savings to be exacted from such a plan, there isn't any huge savings, certainly no savings that really changes the lay of the land in a fundamental way, but a dollar saved is a dollar saved. Third option would be a full consolidation of the police forces of the town of Mount Pleasant and Pleasantville, and we've also analyzed that with the town of Mount Pleasant. Same story as the shared services piece. We are not producing on either side of the table, Mount Pleasant or Pleasantville, a result that would fundamentally change the overall cost of policing those 2 communities. But we continue to talk about it and continue to poke at it to try to find a model that might work. And then lastly would be the option of outsourcing police services to the county in the manner that the town of Ossining did a year or so ago. If there is any silver lining to the long delay we've had with the county, it's that a year has passed with their intermunicipal agreement with the town of Ossining, and therefore we'll be able to dig into the actual results of that experience. Certainly the town of Ossining, the unincorporated town of Ossining, which is the piece covered by the county police, is a rather different setting from the village of Pleasantville. But
So the short answer is we
Right.
don't know anything else.
that is the short answer. See, if Mindy had answered, you
I
would
would have
have
answered, you would have been
home.
laying on the couch already.
Now, is there a saturation point or a maximum where the county will say we don't want to, take over any more local?
I'm sure there would be, and indeed I think one of the issues the county has been working through on their side, and understandably so, is the question of what forces might make sense for them to think of providing services to, what communities would make sense, and how many communities would they be able to or be willing to take on. I don't know what the result of that discussion will be, but I do believe that I'm correct in saying that The Village of Pleasantville was second through the gate after the town of Ossining, and the assurance I've been given is that we'll get a proposal next. So,
Okay, and we were second. Who was first in there?
Ossining,
Ossining.
you know, the existing agreement.
Oh, the existing
agreement with the town of
document.
Ossining.
Okay.
Right.
All right, then. Well, very good. Thank you, and I look forward to checking back after the election.
Okay,
Thanks, Michelle.
thanks.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay, back to our resolutions, Mindy, number 37.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees has reviewed the minutes of the meeting held on Monday, February 27th, and they are hereby approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or corrections? One comment I wanted to make is we made reference in these minutes to the fact that we are sending out for rebid some renovations of the old ambulance corps building to allow it to be used as a recreation center, both the offices for our recreation department as well as an activity and community room in the old garage bays. That's a building that the village has always owned but has been used for 55 years by the ambulance corps. The first bids we got back for a little bit broader scope of work came in well over $300,000, and that was more than we had in the kitty and were willing to spend on that building. So, Patty, where do we stand? Is that stuff back out to bid yet?
It is not.
Is it
We didn't get the bid documents yet from Lothrop.
close?
Very close. I would say
Okay.
probably definitely by the end of the month, we'll have the bids out.
Okay.
I can't see it taking, we got all our legal comments back. We also got comments back from our insurance company about the nature of the bonds that are necessary. So everything's back to Lothrop. We've just been waiting for them to turn it around.
Okay, Lothrop is the architect that has been stamping these drawings
And
for
we're
us.
just waiting for the mechanicals on the
Right.
electricity
Right.
and the
Is a
HVAC.
frustration that
Very frustrating.
simple projects are not so simple in the context of government bidding, but we will continue to press forward with that, and I am optimistic that we'll make it happen. So, no other comments on the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Brian, 38.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the request from the Pleasantville Garden Club to use the gazebo at Memorial Plaza to hold their annual plant sale on Saturday, May 12, 2012, from 6 a.m. to 1 p.m., and further authorizes the Public Works Department to block off 10 parking spaces on either side of the gazebo.
Is there a second?
Second.
Annual event, a great event. They say 6 a.m. to 1 p.m. Don't get there at 12:30, or your selection will be modest.
To say the least. There's usually nothing left.
Thank
Be
you to
there
the
by
Garden
9.
Club. Thank you to the
Get there by
Garden.
9, it's all
Be there
done,
by
yeah?
9.
Thank you to the Garden Club for doing this annually and for supporting their activities. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. Steve, 39.
Whereas the Village of Pleasantville has been notified of an amendment to the cooperative agreement governing NY class, which reflects that the Village of Pleasantville,
No.
Potsdam, will become the new lead participant and provides for changes to the investment advisor from time to time as determined by the governing board of NY class, and whereas the village administrator of the Village of Pleasantville recommends that the village board approve an amendment to the cooperative liquid assets securities system municipal cooperation agreement in which certain terms are modified to reflect the change in the lead participant and investment advisor for the program, now therefore be resolved. The Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby authorizes the village administrator to execute the amendment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Judy, I think that title should be amendment to the cooperative liquid, not cooperation. Am I right? Patty, so this class is the cooperative municipal investment
It
pool?
is. It's an investment pool. We've been participating many years. In its heyday, it was returning some very good returns on investments, but as any other, bank is and investment pool is doing today, it's just about holding, its own. There really isn't much of a return. But we are pooling our resources with other municipalities, and it's a cheaper way to go than investing in the commercial institutions that require we have some minimum compensating balances. So we've been working with CLASS for several years, and all this is doing is advising us that one of the participating communities will be taking a different role in the management of the plan. So the treasurer and I recommend that we stay with class. You know, it's another vehicle for us.
All right, any further comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Number 40, Mindy.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby accepts the resignation letter dated February 23rd, 2012, from Michael F. Wilson, advising that he will resign from his position as Police Lieutenant effective April 13th, 2012.
Is there a second?
Second.
As I mentioned at the outset, Lieutenant Wilson has served the village for several decades, and we wish him well in his next pursuits. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the request from the Pleasantville Volunteer Fire Department to hold their annual firefighters parade on Friday, June 1, 2012, and further resolved that no parking signs will be posted on Friday, June 1st, restricted parking from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the following locations: Memorial Plaza, Bedford Road from Martling to Marble, Manville Road from Grant Street to Grove Street, Olive Grove Street, Edgewood Avenue from Washington to Grove Street, and Washington Avenue, both sides from Edgewood Avenue to Manville Road, Romer Avenue, and further resolved that the Board of Trustees authorizes the Police Department to tow all vehicles in violation of this temporary parking restriction.
Is there a second?
Second.
One of the events that makes Pleasantville Pleasantville. Thank you to the fire department, not only for all they do, but for running this great parade. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion
I'm just
approved.
putting it in my calendar, so
I
don't
put
forget
it in
about
too.
You
that.
going to be there, Mr. Mayor?
I am, yes.
This is, they didn't put the start time in here, but these are generally 7 o'clock. Is that when it starts, or is it earlier? 6?
Yeah, right.
They kick
7,
off
I
at
think.
7.
yeah.
Seven, they just have to
But
close
muster's
from
at
4.
6:30, that's right.
We'll mention that as we approach the day. Number 42, Steve.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby sets a public hearing for the fiscal year 2012-13 tentative village budget for Monday, April 9th, 2012, 8 p.m. Village Hall.
Is there a second?
Second.
We'll be posting a draft budget sometime near the end of March.
Actually, it'll be up on the 20th. It'll be up next week.
Next week.
So
Okay.
by March 20th, and we will both describe that at our next meeting, but also put it up on the website in draft form for anyone who wants to dig into the details. This resolution establishes the date of the formal public hearing, which is on Monday, April 9, right here at a regular board meeting, and then the board will act on its final tinkering with the budget through the month of April in order to approve it by the end of the month, so that it can take effect at the beginning of our fiscal year, which runs from June 1 to May 31.
Can I just add to that this is not unusual or different from what we do every year? That, you know, I've just heard a lot of talk over the last couple of weeks that nobody knows what's in the budget. This is a public document. It's always been a public document. All of our meetings are public. We have this presentation, which is quite a good presentation, given by Patty Dwyer, the village administrator, and hopefully this year she'll have more bells and whistles in the presentation.
Pie charts.
The
for
pie
you.
charts
know
that I
you like
want so
pie
badly
charts.
to help people get a visual. But, you know, I really advise people to get involved in this process, to come here. We beg every year. I know we set these hearings and nobody shows up. It's an empty room and nobody asks any questions. And we're here to answer the questions. We're here to, during the week, anybody in Village Hall is available to answer these questions. So, you know, it's a public document. Anybody can go line by line and do what they want to do with it. We do. We have a very good process in place to review the budget. We each meet with a different department head that usually we're a liaison to during the year. We go to their meetings and we review their budget. We become very familiar with it. We present it back to the rest of the board. We discuss it in detail. These are weeks and weeks and weeks of discussion. So at any time, anybody could jump in and get involved in that process, and I urge everybody to do so.
You're sounding defensive.
I am. I just like, I hear all the time, I don't know, it's in the, well, yeah, it's, go look at it, it's there,
Well, so we'll post, oh,
Stop
we have
the
to
tape.
replace
Oh,
the
good.
tape. Hold the wire.
I didn't talk that long, Shane.
Welcome back. Sorry, we had a brief delay. Needed to switch the tape and the camera. So, as mentioned, we'll both present the draft budget and then have a budget hearing, but we will put the entire budget up on the website, which is pleasantville-ny.gov. So that'll go up by the 20th. And, the status as of the moment is that we are, it is our goal and intent to live within the property tax cap, which is a more complicated calculation than at first it may seem. It doesn't necessarily mean that tax increase would be limited to 2%. What it means is that the tax levy cannot increase by more than 2%. That is, we can't increase the amount of money we get from taxpayers by more than 2%. However, there are a bunch of different codicils to the law that affect the calculation. So bottom line is we'll have more to say on that by the 20th and lots more to say on it over the next 6 weeks as we wrestle with the same issues that all of you wrestle with in putting together your home budgets to try to figure out where we can trim and save and what we can do to make the future more stable and what we need to protect that makes Pleasantville what it is. So all comments are welcome, and again, keep an eye on pleasantville-ny.gov if you would like to get all the detail.
I just think it's important to say that we have a tax cap that we're trying to work within, but we don't take that as sort of permission to raise taxes by 2%. In fact, every year I've been on this board, and I just want to remind everybody of this, we've tried to lower taxes, but it's just, if you come and take a look at the budget, as I invite everyone to do, it's hard to do that, given all of the responsibilities that we have. We're not playing with money, we're not expanding things anymore, we're not expanding services particularly, because we're trying to hold the line. So, and to what Mindy's saying, I think, what people are always surprised to hear when they talk to me about this, we look at every line of this budget. We're studying every single line, and it's embarrassing to be with our department chairman sometimes and be questioning if they really need that extra stapler this year. Can they make do with fewer paper clips? I mean, we're on that level. We're close to the bone. We always have been. So for us to be cutting, we're trying to cut major things and restructure things and look at this differently as we always do. Nothing's changed as far as I'm concerned. It's a sort of business as usual.
And
it's not a fun process because
it's not.
20 years ago or 15 years ago we had plenty of money we could think about.
Say yes.
A police car without lower than 100,000 miles. We could change that over, but these days it's hard to do.
I agree. I just want to add that I spoke to somebody very high up in county government, and they insisted, this is only like 4 weeks ago, they insisted to me that pension was exempt from the 2% tax cap. And they really believe that this is a high official in county government, that's how many misconceptions there are over this tax cap of what it really truly is. So, that is the whole education process too that we all are in together here, and we all have to learn. So
I would just like to add that we have not voted to override that tax cap, and we will be finding a budget that falls within it.
well, I wouldn't say that. We haven't brought it up for a vote to vote on it yet.
Well,
So
there's not a local
whether-
law. There's not a local law pending for a vote.
Well, it doesn't have to, you don't have to vote for it until a week before you vote on the budget. So I wouldn't say
Certainly.
that we're definitely not doing that.
Certainly, it's our goal and intent to live within the
Of course.
cap. And with apologies to anybody who bought a new sled, we're all happy about getting a little bit of breathing
Right.
room this year that we didn't
Or a
spend
snow
any.
blower.
We
I
didn't
got
spend any money
snowshoes
pushing
for
snow
Christmas.
around, so.
You did.
Did you get snowshoes? I haven't.
They're in my car since
I bought-
December 25th.
So, just in case anyone forgot what the resolution was, it's to set a public hearing for the budget
Shane's going to need
of
another
April
tape.
9 at 8 p.m. All in favor? Aye. Motion approved. Number 43.
I don't get it.
Mindy?
I'm 43?
No, yeah, right. Yes, you are.
Okay.
Funny, you don't look.
I don't look 43. Excuse me. What was that supposed to mean? I hope I look younger, if
Yes.
that you mean. Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the following budget amendments: to increase revenue and expenses for water transmission and distribution outside services, $5,000 from non-resident repair to water transmission outside. Appropriate refuge fund balance to auto repairs to increase by $4,350 to the refuge auto repairs. To fund over budget accounts, and the amount of $4,045 from contingency to water administration engineering, $470 from contingency to unallocated insurance, $8,740 from contingency to refuge auto repairs, for a total of $13,255.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. Brian, number
Resolved
43.
that the Board of Trustees hereby accepts an anonymous donation of $50 made in memory of Justin Casey for all his accomplishments and his connections with the Clinton Street Center.
Is there a second?
Second.
Justin Casey passed away about 2 weeks ago, a longtime resident of Sunnyside Avenue, a neighbor of mine, and a longtime and much-loved resident of the Village of Pleasantville who will be missed. Thank you for whoever has made this donation of $50 in his memory. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Steve, 45.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village administrator to sign the amendment to the community block grant application for Parkway Terrace improvements and Manville Road sidewalks, extending the expiration of the community block grant to December the 31st, 2012.
Is there a second?
Second.
So this is just an extension of the agreement we already signed.
Well, all the terms and conditions
Right.
are the same. We had some concerns with getting state DOT permits lined up in time. We finally got those permits after a good 8 months of review by the state. So we're ready to go out probably late spring for bids.
Patty, is this 2011 CDBG money or 2012 CDBG money?
This is actually 2010.
Okay, good, because we have no 2011,
Yeah.
that's still frozen.
I know that. Yeah, this
Okay,
goes
good.
pretty far back.
So this is 2010, so we already have this money, because they went, the county approved they got the allocation for
Okay.
2012, and it's significantly less than what it has been.
I expected that. The
Yeah.
mayor and I went to a meeting about 2 weeks
Yeah.
ago, and we heard Norma
Yeah.
Drummond speak about how, the county's getting cut.
Well, they had some towns drop out of the consortium,
Yes.
which lowers your ratings, and then
Right.
you get less money, and then Congress cut the money
That's
as
right.
well. So
Right. Yeah, this is into
just
the
as
new
long as
round.
it's 2010, because I don't think we're in for anything in 2012.
We put in for some modifications to infrastructure on Cooley Street, and we are not going to get that money.
No, we're not going to get that.
It's not going to happen.
Well, most of it, I think 65% of what was they're going to take are in communities that are low to moderate income communities.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go back and ask for a senior van. I think we can probably get a van out of this next round, but other than that, we really don't have an eligible
You might be able
project.
to get one of the vehicles from the county when they,
When they surplus them?
Yes,
We did
when they
ask.
We
if
looked
they
at that a
really-
few years ago, and they were
Yeah.
pretty long in the tooth, I think.
Yeah, they were.
well, they can
There's
be.
a
I mean,
reason
if
they
you're
didn't-
gonna,
them.
I know a
Right.
lot of the police, the fire departments want them because they use them for,
Command centers.
yeah, they use them for various different, they retrofit them and.
John Oner at the time did arrange, we had an IMA, and we had an opportunity to
Oh,
acquire
right, for the bus.
a bus, but then
Right.
we didn't want it, so
Right,
we got a
yeah.
little...
Yeah, that was a
All
little
right,
too.
messy.
all in favor of Resolution 45?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. Number 46, Mindy.
All right, this is the resolution for the approval of a local law amending Chapter 185, zoning Section 185-35.1, regulations of wireless telecommunications service facilities. This is the public hearing that we just had this today, which, the public hearing stays open, isn't that?
Well, you closed it, now you
We
can...
close it, we can
take
reopen it
action.
at any time, or, it's a 12-month moratorium on applications for cell towers on private property. And I'll just read it, amending the code that I just mentioned, and I will just say
Summarize
it's within the record to, can we post this by any chance on, can this be, this is already posted on the website,
It was
isn't it?
posted on our web. We had no
Yeah.
comments, we had several comments tonight from one resident.
From one resident, right.
And with no other comments, the board closed the hearing, and now you can
Right.
act on the moratorium.
No, I just don't want to read the whole thing.
Right.
It's-
Oh, you don't have to.
It's 6 pages
Yeah.
long, but I
Right.
want people to know that they can go and read it, and it covers all of the local law as well as the Telecommunication Acts of 1996 and what it has to do with the home rule and what supersedes what and what actually we can do in this village, which isn't very much, just location really, but it's all within the record.
Is there a second?
Second.
So just to remind everyone, it does not affect co-location of an existing tower, of new equipment on existing towers or facilities, and there is a mechanism for relief from the prohibition through application to the village board. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Any further new business?
I have one more item
I have
that...
one item as well.
I'm sorry.
No, no.
I will be attending, as you all know, when County Legislator Nona and County Legislator Shinsky formed the Sawmill River Basin Watershed Advisory Board for the county, covering all of the municipalities that are within the Sawmill River Basin watershed area. And we, as a board, appointed Patty as our liaison to that board. I had the pleasure of going with Patty to the meeting 2 weeks ago, which was very informative, a lot of information, but we got in there quite a few times that the mitigation that's being taken place along the Sawmill River Parkway has not come into the village of Pleasantville yet, and that what's going on, and there was somebody from the New York State Department of Transportation, and they were supposed to get back to us. They felt as if they couldn't get their equipment onto Village of Pleasantville property because it was too wet. Hence, that's the problem that we have. It's too wet because there's too much, it floods all the time. So, in any event, Patty cannot go on Thursday, and I will be attending this meeting, and hopefully I'll have some answers for that question.
Thank you.
Come next time.
You had something, Patty?
Just an update. Several months ago, the library board had come to visit the village board to speak about capital improvements, and we did agree, after a lot of discussion with the library board and other discussions with the town of Mount Pleasant, that we would jointly fund repairs to the roof in the upcoming year. We're at the point now of trying to put this into an intermunicipal agreement. I have a draft agreement that was submitted today from the town of Mount Pleasant for us to consider. It's in proper form. I'll have it on our next agenda, but I just wanted at least some acknowledgement that between now and the next meeting, we are going to go ahead with this. Our proportionate share is $144,840. That's after the application of a grant.
And that's a 60-40 split, Mount Pleasant?
That's actually 66-34.
So Mount Pleasant pays 66%,
That's
we pay
right.
34%.
Right. So,
And
you know,
this was not without a tremendous amount of discussion, and I think the library board came to us, 3 years in a row asking, or 4 years in a row asking for this roof.
Yeah, the reason I'm bringing it up tonight, this will be on your next agenda for formal resolution from the board to
Okay.
sign the intermunicipal agreement, but between now and our next meeting,
You-
they may need
yes.
a letter, because the state is asking, for our commitment,
They
so I may have to
got
send
a
something.
grant, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
They got a grant, and I thought we gave them that letter to get the grant.
I did too, but now they want to see the formal
Oh, that's fine.
intermunicipal.
Another
All in
letter.
agreement?
action.
Okay, that's
Yes.
fine.
Go for it.
Okay, very good.
All right.
That's it.
There being no further business, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We will now have a motion to go into executive session for personnel interviews and also advice of counsel on legal matters.
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all. Look
Good night.
forward to talking to you more in the coming days and weeks. Again, the village election is next Tuesday, March 20. The candidates forum for the trustee election is this coming Thursday, right in this room at Village Hall at 8:30 p.m., sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce and available on PCTV through Verizon or Cablevision. Thank you.
Thank you.